Any questions? Good morning. Questions? Anybody? Have you got questions for me? No. Okay, so we'll continue. What we're going to do this morning, we'll start looking at your assignment. So this would be your assignment brief. So the assignment brief is here. So let me just make it a bit bigger for you. Let's have a few general guidelines before we start looking at the specific questions. So let's call it general assignment guidelines. So a few points to bear in mind. Number one, you've got, so the assignment comes in two parts. There are two parts, as you probably know. You've got a report and we've got the report and paper presentation. So altogether, you've got to do something like 3,000 words for the report and 3 for the paper presentation. So you've got a total of 6,000 words, which is quite a demanding assignment. That's one. Point number two, we need to think of the resources. So you need to think of some of the resources which you might find useful. So the resources are, think about you need to look for texts on entrepreneurship. You need to look for texts on human resource management because it's a combined module. You need to consider some of the journals. I'll give you at least one. So, e.g., if you Google effectuation and position by Sarasvati, okay? And of course, you would need to provide real world data to back up your analysis. Okay, so you've got to provide existing data to back up your analysis. So you need to think of those. Okay? Now you need to come up with a new idea. Now when we say new, I would use the word probably you need to produce a kind of novel concept. Business concept. Now, the word business should be interpreted broadly, so this could also include social entrepreneurship, so maybe like NGO or charity, and so on. Okay? Now, it doesn't have to be a totally new thing, but a novel, a kind of different way of doing things. Yeah? It doesn't have to be a big breakthrough like an eBay, Amazon.com, but it could be a restaurant but done slightly differently, or any type of venture, right? So any type of venture, but look for what I would call look for a scalable business. Okay, scalable meaning one which is capable of growing, yeah, which has growth potential. But then again, anything and everything has got growth potential. But some businesses have got more potential to grow, right? Growth potential. So try to contextualize your model, especially today in the COVID era, right? So okay, so that's the main points to bear in mind. And you've got to be aware to also be aware of plagiarism, your deadline, etc. All right, so your marking scheme deadline and your marking scheme also, right? Now, question 1. So, how many words should you write? Now, you've got about 6 different tasks, but I would say roughly what you do, it's up to you. It's entirely up to you how many words you're going to write. But broadly speaking, I would say for the report, and indeed for your presentation for both, let's say for both parts, I would say use 2,000 words, roughly. 2,000 words for the entrepreneurship and roughly 1,000 words for HRM. That would be one way. There are no hard and fast rules, but roughly, I would say roughly. Roughly 2,000 words for entrepreneurship, 1,000 words for HRM, for the report, for both parts. Okay? For both parts. However, this is up to you. You make the decision. You make a decision, right? As long as you're comfortable with it, but you need to give it a bit of balance because it's a combined module, you see? So you can't write everything about entrepreneurship and just half a paragraph on HRM. Okay? So, therefore, for the entrepreneurship, there would be number 2, 3, 4, and 6. 2, 3, 4, and 6 would be about the entrepreneurship. 5 would be about HR. Okay? Now, question 2 looks pretty long, or task number 2 looks pretty long, but here you've got to be brief, because you're going to describe your business concept. What do we mean by a business concept? A business concept is a brief description of an idea. Okay, write it down. So, task 2, let's start looking at the task. Task number 2, the business concept. Business concept. What is it? A business concept is a description of an idea behind a business. Okay, it's a description of an idea. So normally in the description of the idea, you'll have something about the product, the location, the market, the features, what would be so special, and more. Okay? So, best way to understand this is to look at a couple of examples. We're looking at a few examples. Now, let's say, well, yesterday we watched a video. We watched a video on innovation, and I don't know if you remember Karma Kitchen. The two girls who developed the concept of Karma Kitchen, and they managed to raise about £250 million. Yeah, the first round was a round of funding amounting to £250 million. Huge, yeah, and it seemed to be, well, conceptually not really groundbreaking, but yet there's something special, something novel, something that adds a lot of value. So, how would you describe Karma Kitchen? So, you would probably say, okay, so you got it there, Karma Kitchen, haha, current slide. Nah. Yeah, can you see it, all of you? So it says, we build, we lost it. Yeah, there we are. So, how would you describe the business concept? Well, you could say, well, we build, equip, manage the spaces with everything from kitchen porters, community managers, to top-of-the-range equipment. The goal is to provide workspace that encompasses the full needs of a food and drinks business, and then you carry on, because the question says location, target market, describe some of the features of what you provide, and more. So that could be something about Karma Kitchen. Let's take another example. So another example could be, let's say you have developed the sports drink, or an energy sort of drink. Yeah. So you've got to give a description. So what would you say? Description of the product. Description of the product. And so maybe you could say something about the ingredients. Or you could also say that it's a special energy drink which had been endorsed by two well-known scientists, right? You give the name, yeah? So who are they? Two well-known scientists. An energy drink. So you've got to say, in what way is it different, right? How is it different? Now, how would you actually sell the product? We could say, let's say, the product would be sold in small outlets, yeah, linked to sports grounds in London, right? Sports ground used, let's say, used by teenagers in London, right? Now, there must be something novel because there's nothing grand about a sports drink. So now you start putting some kind of novelty in it, something which will stand out, yeah? So, what you could say, now, we're going to provide video streaming, we're going to provide video streaming which will play which will show the users, which are what's happening? It's freezing. Okay, so we're just going to provide a video streaming service which is going to show all the teenagers in action in the field. Yeah, we'll show the teenagers in action, something like that. Yeah. So basically, you're going to film. So there will be film. They will be film, and so on. All right. So when they are drinking, so after the games, they're going to sit down. So they'll see themselves, yeah, on the screen, and this is going to be quite fun. This is going to be fun for them. It's likely to be exciting, and it would probably encourage the team spirit, etc. Right? So we have seen a potential gap in the market. So we are going to roll it out, and afterwards we're going to roll out to other cities, right? And then you say, who are the people behind you? So who are the key founders of this venture, right? So that would be your business concept, which is not, well, it's not so easy to write a business concept, but be guided by the key points. What's your target market? What is special about your offerings? Who are the people behind it? So how long should it be? I would say probably maximum 1 page or a couple of paragraphs, right? And if you wanted to, and it's always a good idea because it's meant to be an academic exercise, so put some references, if you will, yeah? So references, so it could be some kind of academic reference, like Ansoff, for example, suggested that for a business to take off, we need to get 2 things right. We need to get product and market concept right. So this way, you've been able to underpin your discussion with something new, something novel. Okay? This is question 1. Oh, well, it says task 2, yeah? And now we come to number 3, to the third one. So there you would need to introduce quite a few models. You need to explain the window of opportunity for the proposed business, incorporating relevant sources of evidence. So the window of opportunity. So window of opportunity means, well, the potential gap in the market. The gap in the market currently, so there's a window. Like in the COVID era, there had been quite a few windows of opportunity, which probably did not really exist before. Like Zoom, for instance, saw a big opportunity. So Zoom, the company, yeah, saw a big opportunity during COVID, right? So we know the story. So, but for this question, you've got to introduce a number of models. Which ones? Let me take you through a number of ideas.
Mr. Marvin, good morning to you. Just wanted to check, when you choose a company, does it have to be a listed entity, or it can be our own, either imaginary, or since it is an entrepreneurial, way of writing, we can just imagine and write it, or it got to be an listed entity?
Well, obviously there would be this. It would be a little bit fictitious, yeah, but it's got to sound like a real business proposal, right? So there must be some substance in what you're saying. So at least it should be the kind of proposal which is capable of being implemented, developed into a real business. Okay? So I've just given you an example, right? On the board, like the sports drink or the Karma kitchen, yeah? So you develop an idea which could be implemented, which is capable of creating value of some sort. All right?
Okay.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be a listed entity. It can be any entity as
Listed,
long as...
what's listed? No, because you're going to start from scratch, so you can't be listed.
Yeah. Okay, I understand. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now we are coming, so we are looking at the window of opportunity, so opportunity analysis. So we could call this opportunity analysis, window of opportunity. Now, what should you be looking at? You would need to use a variety of models, right? So think about probably what you've learned before. The pestle, the SWOT, the 5 forces, and more. I'm sure you're familiar with all these from your previous courses, but let me take you through. Let's talk a little bit about the pestle, the SWOT, and the 5 forces. So, for the pestle, it would be important for you. I'm assuming that you've done this before in your other modules. You've done marketing and so on, yes? Maybe you could confirm. So for pestle, but anyway, so here you would need to provide some existing data, to support your analysis. Some existing data to support your analysis. So, for example, e.g., it was reported yesterday, for example, we expect the global food delivery service to grow by X%. Yeah? So you actually give the source. So you have to try and make this credible. That should be food. Yeah? It was reported, so this was reported in the video by The Economist yesterday, right? In the video by The Economist yesterday. So the global food delivery service to grow by X percentage. And then you talk about your political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and more, right? So, and also under tech, e.g., we have seen, so today, so because of the pandemic, so we'd say because of pandemic, we have witnessed what we have witnessed what the economists term taxeleration, right? So a lot of things have happened within just a short space of time, right? Taxeleration. So you know how to use Pestle, but you got to contextualize it, make it real, make it sound plausible and persuasive. So generally, your analysis has got to sound right. It's got to sound convincing. It needs conviction, right? It's got to be persuasive. Right? It's got to be persuasive, full of conviction, and the way you do it would be to provide evidence. So a fair amount of work is required on your part, right? So in what way would taxeleration open up an opportunity for you? You explain related to your particular concept, all right?
Good morning, Professor Marvin. I just want to ask you, what is this acceleration? Is it technology acceleration?
No. Yeah, so it was a term which was used yesterday. I think it's a new word which I've been coined. Yeah, so they call it the acceleration of the adoption of new technologies. Okay, acceleration. It's a new term. You don't need to. I'm just giving you an example of what we're trying to say. So under Pestle technology, right? We could say today we have seen the adoption of technology at a very fast pace. Yeah. So they actually said yesterday, "Welcome to 2025." That is to say, what they expected to happen in 2025 has happened now in 2021. We brought forward 2025. They said, "Welcome to 2025." An acceleration of the adoption of technology, which reminds me of Stalin. Joseph Stalin said, sometimes nothing happens in decades. Then suddenly, decades happen in weeks, right? Nothing happens in 20 years, but then all of a sudden, you got 20 years happening in just a few weeks. It's a bit like the online teaching. In fact, I've been telling students since the last 4 or 5 years. So I said someday, the bricks and mortar universities, campuses would probably disappear. By 2030, 50% would disappear, according to a report. And in fact, we are now seeing it happening much sooner. right? It will happen much earlier. So that's a form of acceleration, a form of acceleration. And with the adoption of AI, artificial intelligence. So I've got behind me, I've got my bookshelf. If you really wanted to know more about acceleration, I would advise that you read the text. Let me write it down for you. This is by, it says, let me write it down on the board. The author is called Yuval Harari. Harari, you probably read some of his texts or heard about him. So Yuval Harari, and probably his best book would be Sapiens. He is a historian, but of a different kind, a very talented historian, and his books have been endorsed by people, by Obama, Bill Gates, and all the great and the good. On the same page, people like Bill Gates, Obama said, you must read this book. It's a must read. And somebody said it's the most interesting book they've ever read. I bought a copy, quite a few copies of his texts. I bought quite a few of his books, rather. So, and they're extremely, extremely interesting indeed. Now, he talks primarily about the adoption of AI. So, the adoption of technology, right? So, artificial intelligence. So, in the future, we'll have a lot of artificial intelligence. Now, he says in his text, from making yogurt to teaching yoga, right? Just to use his words, everything would be done, if you like, by robots. Everything would be done by robots. Now, the pinnacle of human intelligence, you might say, is the game. The game, let's call it chess. Chess, yeah, the game of chess, encapsulates the pinnacle of human intelligence. Chess, right? Now, a chess grand master, one of the chess grand masters would be Garry Kasparov. Garry Kasparov, the Russian. So he'd been a chess grandmaster for many years. Nobody had been able to beat him. Scientists believe that for every second, his brain could calculate 3 to 4 potential moves. So in one second, his brain could calculate 3 to 5 potential permutations on the chessboard, right? On the board. Ordinary people like you and me would probably take several minutes. Others would take several minutes. But Kasparov is a very clever guy. His brain is ticks in a different mode. Okay? Very high IQ. Super. What happened? However, IBM developed a software. It took IBM 10 years to develop the software. And eventually, the software managed to beat Kasparov. And it became national, international news. The software per second, in 1 second, could calculate about 3 million permutations. So the cleverest man in the world is no match for our software. Okay? So that became global news. But that's not the end of the story. Now, eventually, that took 10 years. Eventually, what happened? What happened next? The small artificial intelligence company in the USA programmed a robot to take on IBM, and the robot managed to beat IBM. It managed to beat IBM. But the question is, how long did it take the robot to learn the intricacies of chess? IBM took 10 years to develop the software. But what about the robot? How long did it take to learn how to beat IBM? It took not 10 years, not 5 years, not even a year. Within 4 hours, it was able to master the game of chess to become the best. Right? So that's why he says from anything to anything, really. Right? So if you go and see your doctor, right, you've got problems with your throat, your nostril. The doctor, you go and see your ENT doctor. Doctor would look at your throat, at your nose, nostril, and then would give you a prescription. So within minutes, the doctor would be able to diagnose your problem. Why? Because the doctor has seen many throats, many nostrils, many ears before. The doctor had developed a pattern of recognition, a schema, which we call a scheme. So the doctor has developed a pattern of recognition which could be taught to a robot, right? So robots could do many things. We could replace doctors by robots. Indeed, many surgical procedures are now being done by AI, right? By robots. It may be more difficult to replace nurses because nurses need to show empathy. Yeah, so for more empathy, they need to use their feelings, their emotions. Yeah, and those may be more difficult to teach to a robot, right? So if you tell a robot to send a spaceship into outer space, they might find that not too difficult. It might be easier for a robot to send a spaceship into outer space than to make you a cup of tea. So make me a cup of tea, that would be much more difficult, right? So it might be more difficult to replicate the human hands. We tend to be fascinated by technologies, by computers, by many technological innovations, but the human hand is an amazing engineering feat. Watch your hands. Those might be more difficult to teach to a robot. We could thread a needle, do lots of amazing things, right? But, so, therefore, that would be my brief answer to taxonomy, right? So, do have a look at the texts, some of the books by Hariri for your own personal development. It's not important for the assignments per se, but for your personal development, it would be very useful to look at those texts. Okay, so we know about Pascal, and what about the 5/40? Are you familiar with the 5/40? What would be, okay, let me just put a question to you about the 5/40. What would be an ideal set of five, or shall we just put it the other way? How what would be an ideal set of 5/40? Cool. And entrepreneurial venture. So what do you think? A, for a new entrepreneurial venture, and probably B for we'll just cross this one out. Yeah. What would be an ideal set of 5/40 for new entrepreneurial venture? And for a running business. So think about this one for a couple of minutes. Okay, so probably it might be easier to answer this one. Let's try B first, and then maybe draw some conclusion for A. Let's draw. So I'm looking at B here, B. So here, what could we say? Let's call it rivalry. Let's call this one barriers to entry. Let's call this one substitutes. And then you got the bargaining power of the buyer and the bargaining power of the supplier. Okay? So, for running business, if you were running a company, you were already in business, you've been in business for several years, what would be a good set? The key word here is an ideal set of five forces. Rivalry. You want rivalry to be strong or weak?
Weak.
Weak rivalry. Okay? Because who wants rivals? Do you want to have any rivals? You were married to a beautiful man or a beautiful woman. Would you want people to visit you when you were not at home? Probably not. Barriers to entry. Many or few? Barriers to entry.
It works both ways. I mean, if you want to,
I think if
for you, but if there is a competition, you don't want him to have an easy barrier.
Yeah. So if you are already in business, you probably want many barriers. Yeah. You would probably want so many barriers preventing. In fact, businesses spend a lot of money, a lot of resources to create entry barriers. Right. That's one of the key purposes of strategic management, or it's the fundamental ethos of strategic management to create entry barriers. Yeah, so many. Coca-Cola creates or would love to have more and more barriers to prevent others from entering the business. New entrants. Yeah. Substitutes, you want to have very few, yeah, few or none. Bargaining power of the buyers, you want them to have a lot of bargaining power, or low or high? Low, because if they've got bargaining power, they're going to bargain prices down. And therefore suppliers, you want them to have low bargaining or little, yeah, low bargaining power as well. So, generally, but for new entrepreneurial venture, you see, the difficulty is if you've got many barriers to entry, then it may be difficult to enter, you see. So, therefore, you might choose a business or an industry whereby there's somebody writing on my board. So for new venture, you would probably want to go for a business which would probably have fewer entry barriers. Because if the barriers are too many, then it may be difficult for you to enter, right? And the other bits would probably apply too. All these would be okay, would be nice to have, right? But it's not always possible. However, if the barriers are too high, as a new entrepreneur, it may be difficult to enter. Right? So just bear those points in mind. Yeah. Try to provide, again, as I say, in your research, provide some kind of evidence to back up your claim. Okay? Now, on the issue of window of opportunity, right? We could look at the window of opportunity by looking at a graph. Let me just draw a graph here. Let's call this one time, over time, and let's call this one industry growth, WT, industry growth. some industries may well be growing at a pretty fast pace. Let's call this one here. That's one. So I'll call this one A. Another one had been growing from there, and then probably because of the pandemic gone down, but expected to pick up, and then maybe there's another one here. So industry growth does not exhibit the same pattern. Let me call this one A. Let's call this one A. Call this one B. Call this one C. And call this one D. D. Which one would you go for as an entrepreneur? Which one would be good for you? A, B, C, D. Well, we could probably answer the question in a different way. We know that which one would you not touch? You would not touch A. A is no good for you because here the window of opportunity is shut, is finished, right? It's closed. So during the pandemic, many windows were shut, right? So either they were shut temporarily or indeed permanently, right? Or some businesses, some industries, by their very nature, will just disappear. Now, many people, many entrepreneurs or many people would say, well, B is quite attractive, right? B appears to be quite attractive, right? B, let's write it down. B is attractive, but, there's a but, let's put it in capital, but, there's a but, attractive, but, right? It's attractive, but it is attractive. So there would be many players. So B is going to attract many players. So competition is likely to be quite stiff. Stiff competition. And eventually there would be what's called a shakeout in the industry. A shakeout, right? So an industry shakeout, meaning the weak ones will have to disappear. It's like a fruit tree with many mangoes. If you shake it, I don't know if you could shake a mango tree, right? The bad ones, rotten ones are going to fall, right? So you could be the rotten apples or mangoes, yeah, falling out. It may be difficult. So an example here may well be, I don't know, let's say mobile apps that have been growing pretty fast. A lot of people have been attracted to B, but the danger is a lot of competition, very stiff. So therefore, C could be quite good. So it's forecast that many businesses, at least in the UK, would pick up very soon, like a coiled spring. Many, yeah, have gone down here, the spring, but soon, once the pandemic is under control, it's going to jump out, it's going to pick up again. What about D? D is pretty stagnant, right? But creative entrepreneurs can snap out, yeah, of so can snap out of it. Yep. So for example, here in the UK, some years ago, during the recession, e.g., UK, during the recession, yeah, during the recession, some entrepreneurs came up with a novel kind of idea. They opened what was called the 99p store. So you could buy a lot of products for 99p. Many household items, detergents, cutlery, candles, whatever, uh, even biscuits, all for 99p. They were all imported, and they managed to double, quadruple their profit. Yeah, so they were earning much more than the big chains of supermarkets. Yeah, so the big departmental stores. So you got to be creative to snap out of it. Yeah. So therefore, we could say there are opportunities everywhere. There are opportunities everywhere. Okay, except for A. You want to avoid A. Okay, so we'll stop for a 10-minute break. So make it 10 minutes, and then we'll continue with this question. Thank you. Okay, so let's continue. We were talking about opportunity analysis. So, opportunity analysis. So, what I suggested that you actually go through PESTLE, SWOT, the 5 forces. These are models that you're already familiar with. And also, what you could do, you could just observe the current trends. So, yesterday we did see a video, and the trends were there's a shift from the bricks and mortar to the click and mortar with a lot of acceleration, online trading, more Zoom, and so on. So we want to know whether this is global or is it just local. But what did make the point that in the pandemic, some of the windows were shut and some of the windows were open. Now, you need to also define your market. Yeah? So now you become a bit more narrow. You need to know what is your PTA, STA, and TTA. So what do we mean by PTA? So PTA is your primary target audience. Your primary target audience. So PTA stands for primary target audience. Now, if you look at your market, now who's your market? You could say, well, anybody who's prepared to pay for something, right? But that's not the right way to look at it. So if you open, say, a restaurant somewhere downtown, you say, well, who is your primary target market? Who is most likely to come to your restaurant? Would it be teenagers, students, working people, office people, couples, families? Who are they? So that's your PTA, primary target audience. And then you've got people, so the primary target audience, PTA, would be those people who come, who are coming to, so what you could call the regulars. So the PTA would be the regulars here, likely to come to the workplace, PTA. And then we've got what we call the secondary target audience, the STA, secondary target audience. So those people, what you might say, are the occasional customers. And then we've got what we call then those who might come to your place of business rarely. They are the rare customers, maybe very occasional, right? So they come rarely. And then indeed, you may have another category over here, which you might call the refusing non-customers. Refusing non-customers, meaning they would never consider coming to your workplace. They would never consider coming to buy from you. Refusing non-customers. So if you're able to develop a set of offerings that could capture everybody, then this could be very useful. Okay? So this could be very useful if you're able to develop a set of offerings that could capture everyone. right? So let me show it to you on a slightly different diagram, right? So if okay, so so the first would be your regular customers, your primary target audience, secondary target audience, the very rare ones, and the fourth would be the refusing non-customers, right? The refusing non-customers. So these could be the unexplored market. Now, if as an entrepreneur you're able to develop something new, a new set of offerings to tackle the third and the fourth, then you could open up a very significant market space, right? An example. Let me give you an example. There are many such examples, right? Many examples. Let's consider classical symphony orchestra. What type of people would go to a classical symphony orchestra? They would tend to be, they tend to be middle-aged, elderly people. What income group? High income group. People who understand the high culture. The venue which we use would be quite expensive. The conductor gets paid about £2 million a year. And many classical orchestras in Western Europe, in America, do not make any profit at all. They make little or no profit. They survive on donations. They get donations from lottery money from other sources. Okay. So therefore, their market is very small. So you've got many refusing non-customers. A ticket costs about £200, right? So a couple attending an orchestra would cost 400 plus on expenses, £500, which is quite a lot of money. So how do we satisfy the refusing non-customers? What do we do? How are we going to do it? Well, I can only show you a video. Let's watch somebody called Andre Roux, right? So let me write the name down for you. Andre Roux is an entrepreneur, is a conductor turned entrepreneur. You probably have heard of Andre Roux. Now, just watch the crowd very carefully, and then we'll see what is actually done.
There's a less familiar.
Er is een tussentrein. Zus op de luiers. En er is hij. Kijk.
Okay, so we got Andre Roux and Akim Kamara.
Dames en heren, heb je namelijk ook een prik met water. En we zullen ook citeren laten zien. We hebben een flesje water, jongens. Ja. Dat is niet te geloven, dat is een jonkje. Je mag het kunt jullie openmaken. tinggal. Yang dia harus lebih pasang. Okay.
Mr. Marvin, this video is like we're not
Jetzt spelen das Violinkonzert in G-Dur, Opus 11 von Ferdinand Hüffer.
Sorry, is there a problem with the video? Yeah, you were saying? Hello?
Yeah. Now we don't see anything. It's gone off the screen.
Okay, I'll give you the link.
Yeah, I think that will be better. We can watch later, probably.
Okay, let's just watch a few more minutes. I just want to illustrate a few points.
All right.
Now, so it's not the music which we're interested in. It would be the crowd. Look at the number of people attending. So you've got a huge crowd. Okay? Okay, so as you can see, he's been able to attract a huge crowd. Normally, for the traditional classical symphony orchestra, it is a very small, right, group of people who would attend, a small crowd, but this one is huge. In what way? What did he do differently? Well, he mixed modern music with classical music in order to bring down, so in order to appeal to the third and fourth category I was talking about. So the whole idea was to actually try and appeal to the non-refusing customers. That's one. Secondly, he used a football stadium, attracting thousands of people. So instead of charging 200 euros per ticket, he was able to bring it down to about 20 euros. Right? So although he brought down the price, he was able, right, to earn a profit because of the volume. So the high volume offset the lower price. So what he did, combined modern music, classical music, attacking the third and the fourth category. He brought down the price through economies of scale. Right? Right? So, if as an entrepreneur you're able to think out of the box, that could be a possible advantage, right, to you. We've got the question again, right? So you need to explain the window of opportunity for the proposed business, incorporating the relevant sources of evidence, right? So you've done your PESTEL, your SWOT, your 5 forces. You could talk about your PTA, your primary target audience, your secondary target audience, and then your tertiary target audience, okay? So that would be another way. Right? And also, what you could do over here you could discuss the positioning of your business. How would you position your business? In what way? Right? So, let's see. You could position your business in terms of what we call pricing and quality. So if I call this quality over here, quality, and this is price and quality. So the quality could be low, the quality could be medium, and the quality over here could be high. The price could be low, the price could be medium, and the price could be high. So this is called, it's a model put forward by Bowman. It's called Bowman's clock. Okay? Bowman's clock. Now, our positioning could look a bit like a clock. If you look at a clock, you've got many different time combinations. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 20 to 2, 31 past 2, and so on. But where would you position yourself as an entrepreneur on the clock? There are 8 major landmarks, 8 major possibilities. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? So let's label each one. So I'll call this one number 1. That's number 2. That's 2. That's a 3. That's a 4. That's a 5. That's a 6. That's a 7. It's an 8. Now, which one would be the best one for you as an entrepreneur? Can you be successful over here? Low price, low quality. Maybe there are some entrepreneurs which happen to be in this one, but the value created would be perceived to be quite low. But the advantage is to the customer, they'll be paying a low price, right? So in the United Kingdom, for example, as I said to you, there are some businesses which are here, they're called the 99p, the 99p store. The 99p store would be over here, right? And then we have probably number 2. Number 2 would be supermarket, own label products would be at number 2. Some small entrepreneurs may have the advantage of 3. So small, creative entrepreneurs might be over here, right? So, for example, a small butcher, a florist, yeah, a small restaurant, pretty low price or medium price, but high quality. So small entrepreneurs may have a cost advantage. They don't need to incur very high overheads, right? And then you've got 4, 5, 6. So 4 is called a hybrid. That's a premium. But the ones which are not going to work would be those over here which are not going to work. Okay? So they're likely to fail. So in your discussion, you could introduce the Bowman's clock. You could introduce the Bowman's clock, right, in your discussion. Okay? You could also discuss maybe pricing. Yeah? How would you price your products? Right? And if you're familiar with the 4Ps, you could also discuss the 4Ps. Okay? So how do we actually price the product? I will come to this one in answer to the last question, the break-even. So I will develop this further under break-even. The next question concerns the business model canvas. The business model canvas. Draw the business model canvas in relation to the proposed business idea and explain all the components in it according to the proposed business idea. Right? So, what is a business model canvas? Now, a business model is how we actually capture what we call value. We capture value. So, how do we capture value is what could be done in order to enhance the value creation either for the business, for the customer, or anybody. There are different models available, different ways of creating value. Now, the best way to understand value business model. A business model is a firm's plan or diagram addressing a number of things. How are we going to compete? How do we use our resources? How do we structure relationships? How do we create value? Now, yesterday we spoke about eBay. How does eBay capture value? It captures value through a special platform, an IT-driven platform, bringing buyers and sellers together. It's one way. It captures value by using the auctioning principle. You could be an agent working for a company. So the agent is going to add value to what the buyers and sellers are seeking. So agents come in between the buyer and the seller. They make it possible, right, to create value. So we'll be using quite a few examples for you to understand it. All right. In 1959, just to give you an example, 1959, Xerox came up with what we call the photocopier today, right? So, however, the photocopier was actually 6 times more expensive than the alternative. They appointed a firm of consultants to do some market research for them. And the consultants came back and said, look, there's no market for your photocopier. All right? So the question is, how did their business model change everything? Now, a major theorist on business model is somebody called Alexander Osterwalder. So the best way for us to understand business model is to listen to Osterwalder for a few minutes. You could listen to the rest of it in your own time. So we're now going to listen to Alexander Osterwalder in order to be able to understand the meaning of business model. So I'm going to take you through the business model canvas.
Hi everybody, my name
Okay, I've given you the link in the chat box. So the author here, that's him, Alexander Osterwalder. It's a long video, but we're going to watch only about 5 minutes of it to get the essence of what he's talking about.
My name is Alexander Osterwalder. I wrote a book called Business Model Generation together with Ethan. And the book is used around the world to figure out what are business models and how do we design business models. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to design, test, and build business models. And we're going to dive deeply into the topic with a Swiss invention. And we're going to go into the time machine, which was invented in Switzerland. I'm going to take you back to 1958. Why 1958? Because I would like to introduce you to a person called Chester Carlson. So I learned about Chester Carlson from Henry Chesbrough. He told me the story about Chester Carlson. Chester Carlson was at the head of a research team at a company called Howard, and he invented the first modern-day photocopy machine. This was an amazing machine. It could make 2,000 copies a day at a time where you could maybe make 15 to 30, the very smelly and dirty process. Okay? That was a big technological jump. Problem was that this technology was very expensive. It was about 7 to 8 times more expensive than anything known at the time. So what do if you have this wonderful technology? You're not quite sure how you can bring it to the market. So Halloween went to the consultants, a company called Arthur D. And they asked them, what should we do? Arthur D. Little did their market research, came back. What do you think they told Halloween? They said, there's no market. They went out, they searched. Of course, you couldn't sell a technology that was so expensive. So Halloween didn't listen. They went back to the drawing board. And they came up with a new business model. It's actually the business model that defined the photocopying industry until today. So they thought, well, what if we allowed companies to lease the technology for $95 a month? And they would get 2,000 photocopies for free. But every time they would make an additional copy that month, they would have to pay a couple of cents per copy. So what happened was that companies jumped on this offer. They loved the leasing of this great technology. And they started photocopying not 2,000 times a month, but 2,000 times a day. Which means that from day 2 onwards, Halloween, which became Xerox, had amazing growth rates. They started to earn substantial amounts of money on millions, billions of photocopies that were made. Pretty interesting story. Now, let's get back into the time machine. And let's move to 1997. Now I want to introduce you to 2 people who probably don't need any introduction. Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Probably you know them very well. Now they came up with another invention, or we could say they popularized the first modern-day search engine. They had a different problem. Their product, their service, was not too expensive. It was free. Now, how do you make money from free? I think they have proven how you can do that. They figured out how to make money from contextualized advertising by selling search terms. And not just by selling them, by auctioning them off. So the pricing mechanism made the big difference. Now, if you look at those two examples, what do they have in common? What's similar between those two examples? What do you think? I'll give you 3 points. The first point is a very important one, is that in both cases, the product innovation, the technology innovation alone was not sufficient. It was important. It was even a core part of the success, but alone it was not sufficient. It was the combination between technology and product innovation and the business model. So you really want to figure out how business models, products, technology, how they fit together and how they can lead to success and give you competitive advantage. The second point was that they didn't copy from competitors. Nobody did anything like that, so they had to invent new business models. And what's the first thing we do today? We look around us, we try to figure out what others do. And we might want to be a little bit better, a little bit faster, maybe a little bit cheaper. But sometimes it can be very powerful to move ahead and try out something new, a new business model, because that's what can give you a real competitive edge. And now let's look at the third point. What do you think? Could they prove up front that these business models would work? Very tough, right? They didn't know that these business models would work. So they had to experiment. They had to experiment, figure out if this would work. And that obviously requires some risk taking. And what I'll talk about a little bit at the end of the presentation is, could we test business models? Let's see. So, there are 3 things that we don't do well when it comes to business models. And those 3 things were addressed in the points that we've seen before. And that's what I'm going to talk about in the next couple of minutes. First, how do we discuss business models? When I say how do we discuss business models, I mean how do we go beyond products and services to think about all of the pieces that make a business successful. And the second point is, well, how do we come up with innovative business models? If we can't copy from around us, well, we might need some techniques and tools to come up with great business models. And the third point is, how do we test business models before we build them? 3 interesting points. So let's dive deep into the first one. So I want to look at how we discuss business models. And we'll start with a little mini case here. And I want to get you to work, even though it's a webinar, right? But we're going to look at coffee. Coffee is an interesting industry. It's a commodities business, right? More coffee growers than ever before. Vietnam hasn't existed as a coffee grower a couple of decades ago, and now they're one of the biggest. So let me ask you a question related to my home country, because I have the data there, Switzerland, but it's a similar phenomenon happening. How much do you think do we pay less or more for coffee consumed at home, in our homes? What would your guess be? Is it 20% less? Is it 20% more? What do you think? Turns out, Swiss are paying 600 to 800% more for coffee consumed at home. And it's not George Clooney, it's actually the brand to which George Clooney stands in most parts of the world. It's Nespresso. Nespresso has changed the business model of espresso, the selling of coffee to households. And at the heart of their business model, there's a machine, well designed, with aluminium pods, coffee inside. You take the aluminium pods, you put them into the machine, you press a button.
Okay, so he's mentioned quite a few examples of business model. 3 of them, which were Google, Nespresso, and what's the other one? And Xerox. Okay, Xerox. So what happened to Xerox? Initially, let me go back to the slides. Xerox. So Xerox appointed a team of consultants to go and investigate the market to see whether there was a potential market for a photocopier that they had developed. But it turned out to be 6 times more expensive. And they said there would be no market for it. So without changing the product, right, at all, but by changing the business model, they were able to turn this into a money-making machine. That is to say, they told the customer, no need to buy the product outright. Just pay us $95 per month, and we are going to charge you a few cents in excess of 2,000 copies, so you've got an allowance of 2,000 copies a month. So because of convenience and sophistication, customers started copying in large quantities, which means that Xerox managed to turn this into a revenue generator. Why? Customers exhausted the quota within just a couple of days. Within just a week or so, they managed to copy 2,000. Suddenly, everybody had something to photocopy. Right? So there was a new toy in the office. So people found things to photocopy. Photocopy the birth certificate, the passport, the dog's license, divorce certificate, bringing things from home. They were able to turn this, so Xerox was able to turn it into a revenue generator. Notice it was the way that they structured their business, which we call business model, the way that the business empowered the use of the photocopier that turned it into a revenue generator. What about Nespresso? What happened? Nespresso was a subsidiary of Nestle. They were making losses. What they were doing, they were selling ground coffee in a packaged ground coffee. There was no real point of differentiation. Many companies, many countries were doing it. So Nestle was actually about to shut down Nespresso. But then they came up with a new idea. What was the idea? Well, they came up with the coffee making machine which you could use at home. So they sold the customer a coffee machine, probably at a reasonable price, maybe low price, okay, so low price or so, and but once you got the machine, what do you need to make coffee? You need to have the coffee pods. And who would provide the coffee pods? It would be Nespresso. So they would lock the customer into the machine. Once you're locked into the machine, you've got to buy coffee pods from Nespresso. And that again, a bit like Xerox, it became a money spinner. So, how do we design a business model? So, we could start with what's called a canvas. This is a canvas which Alexander Osterwalder has proposed. Now, he said we could use the canvas creatively, we could chop and change, we could ignore bits and pieces, as long as we try to answer some questions. So in developing our business model, we could be looking at key activities and resources. So they say, well, in your business model, you're going to say, well, who are going to be your key partners? Who are the people who are going to work with you? So let's say you're trying to develop a low-cost airline, a budget airline. Who are going to be your key partners. Your key partners are likely to be the airports, the fuel supplier, maybe the regulators. So you need to develop a relationship with them. We are Westminster College. Who are our key partners? Well, one of the partners would be TSD, Trinity St. David's University, right? That's a partner. So you develop a relationship with a partner. The partner could be a supplier, it could be a regulator, it could be probably even a rival, right? Who has teamed up with you to work on a common project, right? So, for example, Sony and Apple, right? Sony and Apple, so were rivals on the MP3, the iPod, but also they were partners in developing the lithium battery, in using the lithium battery jointly. So who are your partners? What are your key activities? The key activities would be, what is it that you need to be very good at? Yeah? What is it that you need to be good at? Yeah? So, what are the key activities of a tailor? A bespoke tailor. A bespoke tailor needs to be good at designing, at cutting the cloth, at stitching, at darning and finishing. What should Canon be good at? A company like Canon. It should be good at designing lenses. What about Apple? What should they be good at? They should be good at designing the product, mixing diverse technologies. Honda makes motorbikes, cars, water pumps, boats, lawnmowers, but they're very good at a core product. They're very good at making combustion engines. Yeah, they're good at making combustion engines. So what should you be good at? Yeah, so the key activities. What are your key resources? A company usually have three main resources. What are the three resources? The three resources are called. There would be called, so the three key resources are the P resources, are the H resources, and the F resources. So, do you have all the P, the H, and the F? What do you think they are? The P resources would be, the H resources would be, and what about the F resources? So the P resources would be the physical resources. The physical, right? So you may have a competitive advantage by having superior physical resources. Your location, for example, could be the best, right? Or if you are a hotel, you're using a disused palace as a hotel. So your rivals, even though they might have money, they would not be able to get such a physical resource. Physical resources. You also need to have human resources. And also, you need to have financial resources. Financial. So, in your analysis, you need to tick quite a number of boxes: physical, human, and financial resources. So, who are your key partners? What are your key activities? Do you have the resources required? Have you got the money? And if you haven't got the money, what are you going to do? Right? So if you haven't got the financial resources, you as a young entrepreneur, you need now to consider what are the sources of finance. What are the sources of finance for a new entrepreneur? Where does the money come from? So something which we'll try to answer in a moment, but basically there would be a number of sources. That could come from you, from yourself, the family, but there could also be business angels. There would be a variety. There would be a variety of sources which would explore. It could be the banks, venture capital, that's a bit difficult to get. So a little later, we're going to look at business angels. We're going to see how business angels could be useful in funding your venture. So the next part would be what we call value proposition. That is to say, what is so special about your offerings? What are you going to create for the customer? Are you going to solve a problem? Are you going to make something more fun for the customer? Are you going to make life easier? Would you be able to, for example, deliver products on the doorstep like Amazon.com? Right? So are you going to give them peace of mind, security, fun, excitement, enjoyment? What do you propose? Right? It could be a 48-hour delivery service. You could sell a product, but the moment it breaks down, within 48 hours, we would deliver parts anywhere in the world. That's a value proposition. Right? You make something, a special proposition to the customer, which rivals may not be making. Right? Okay? And then customer relationships. What kind of relationship do you want to build? Do you want to provide a customized service, or are you going to use more technology to provide that service? Yeah. So if you are a bank, for example, there may be two types of customers. There would be the high net worth individuals who require a customized service. But for the public at large, you would not be able to provide a customized service, but you would use technology to provide something like a customized service. Yeah? So what sort of relationship do you want to develop? Right? So a very tight, special relationship with them, a one-to-one, in which case that would take up your time, right? But you may be in a position to charge a premium price. If you're a bespoke tailor, customer relationship, bespoke tailor, you would develop a tight relationship with the customer, but you could charge a premium price. Alternatively, you are in the garment business, but you are not really providing a bespoke service. You're going to mass produce your products, right? So the customer relationship is going to be somewhat different. You could be a newspaper. Who are your customers? There would be two types. It could be the reader, there would be the reader and the advertiser. So the relationship that you would build with them would be somewhat different. Okay? Who are your customers? Okay, so we are running, we are going to stop here for now. Let's have a look at the other questions very quickly. We are on question 4, task number 4. the business model canvas. Okay? And then we are going to talk about, yes, the business model canvas. And then we need to talk about the HR. We'll develop the HR in a bit of detail, and then we'll do this one. Okay, so when we come back, I'll continue the discussion of business model canvas, right? And then we'll talk about HR. Thank you. Any questions, anybody? Do you have any questions? So, if you've got any questions, if there's something you don't understand, yeah, say so. Yeah, you could share. Yeah. Okay, so I will leave. All the slides with Dr. Tom. Okay, don't you worry. So I've got many slides, but sometimes to develop an idea, I need to write on the board. Okay, so we can't write everything in the slides, as you would appreciate. So sometimes we have to, use the board. That's why we've got a board. All right. But much of what I've got to tell you are on the slides. All right? Okay, so we'll stop here and I'll see you, and I think what time do we come back? Is it 3 hours from now?
Yeah, 2 p.m. at Malaysian time, sir.
2 p.m. So what time would it be there right now? 11?
Now it is at 11:05.
11:05.
Yeah.
Okay, 11:05. Thank you. All right, so
I'm going to end the session, and I will phone up again at 2 p.m. and the new afternoon session will start.
Okay, 2 p.m.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, sir.
See you. Bye-bye. Okay, so we are on the session now. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Bye-bye.